Um, Roy Cohen, a queer filmmaker living in Tel Aviv, here with Far From Maine, premiered in Rotterdam an intimate letter to his Palestinian friend murdered by Israeli police when they were teenagers, and a reckoning with that conscious cost in your own society. Roy Cohen. Johanna Faltinat, a dramaturg and co-founder of the Bureau for Vielfältiges Erzählen. She and her team advises writers, productions, and broadcasters on how to tell diverse stories well, so that characters from marginalized groups come through as full people rather than cliches. Johanna Faltinat. Yasmin C. Rams, German co-producer of The Beauty of Ballroom, following ballroom pioneers across Southeast Asia who builds chosen families against homophobia, racism, and HIV stigma, the glue of the outsiders, set on the other side of the world. Yasmin C. Rams. Claudia Schroter, German co-producer of Everyone's Sorry Nowadays, from this year's Berlinale generation, the story of a 13-year-old who's invisible at home until her favorite actress steps out of the screen and finally sees her. Claudia Schroter. Let's start with you, Johanna. Tell us about what your organization does and what effects queer stories and characters have on general population and why it's important to commission them.
Okay, it's two big questions. Let me start with the Büro für Vielfältiges Erzählen. I co-founded it with Letizia Milano in 2019 now. And since then, we mostly supported writers, production companies, but even, a lot of people in the industry actually about how to develop their scripts. And we focused very early in power critical access to that. And we also we consult and we provide workshops as well. So, and we have like some main things that are important to us. First of all, we always work as a team. So dialogue is a method for us. We always talk through everything with both our perspectives. So this widen up a lot. And second, it's always important to, sorry, I'm a bit nervous now, so I forgot the second thing.
Really intense.
Yeah, it's really, I can't see you at all. Regarding diversity, it's always important for us not to focus only on like queerness, some identity that we both share, Letizia and myself, as a perspective, but also have intersectionality as a main focus there as well. And for us, diversity is more, and that's what we always tried, is to focus on the potential, on the stories that haven't been told. So we always say developing diverse, so-called diverse characters, it's just a character with an add-on. And it's always the add-on that these characters have to focus or to live in a society where there is a border of normality. So they have to find strategies to live with othering, with discrimination. And this really gives some add-on in everything, in the rooms, in the settings they walk. And so this is one thing. And the other thing is that we focus on is the joy, is the celebration, and the community marginalized groups have as well. So this is always something that storytelling from a dominant society perspective is always missing. And this is like a full circle character development we focus on.
And I mean, why do you think we've moved? I mean, in Germany, there were so many horrible representations of queer people, especially in the 90s. on TV, and today we have shows, like Schwarze Früchte, which show a very kind of nuanced, queer black perspective, which shows how far we've come and maybe now experiencing a backlash against that. What brought about, do you think, that change from those really horrible cliche representations of the 90s to nuanced, complex characters that we've seen in the last few years? And is there a backlash, do you think, against that today?
To answer your last question first, yes, there is a backlash. I mean, there are numbers which projects are funded, which projects will go through the gatekeepers and the broadcasters, but I'm not sure what brought us. Probably a lot of activists brought us here, like projects of Schwarze Früchte. And I think maybe the dominant society was always a bit bored about their same questions, stories over and over again. So this is like maybe, I don't know, maybe you have opinions too, but I think this might be too.
I think it's also that queer people have gotten into the writer's room and have gotten into the directors and producers, which it's not just the powers that be telling stories about us, it's us telling our own stories, probably. What?
Yeah, I'm not sure, maybe they have been there before, but they didn't have the chance to tell their stories and their perspectives. I think, my colleague worked in, I think it wasn't the 90s, but early 2000s, Nullerjahre, in a daily soap in Germany, and they had she told me one story that, or Leticia told me one story that there was an actor who had in his contract that he was not allowed to play any line that could refer them as a gay character. So and the writer's room was full of gays, so they really had fun in inventing or subversive right lines he didn't detect as a straight guy. So I think the people were there, but it's a difference to be allowed to tell the stories and your own perspective, or you have to reproduce the dominant straight or whatever stories.
Thanks. I want to come back with you to you about the backlash if when we have time. But in the meantime, you talked a little bit about queer joy, and I want to move then to Claudia, because Claudia, you in your film, co-produced film, Everyone's Sorry Nowadays, queer joy plays a role in the film. And why do you think that queer joy was so important for you guys to include in the film, and what kind of what does it bring across to the audience and your film's also very geared to a young audience. What does it bring for young people to be able to see that on the screen?
Hi, is it on? Oh. Hello? Hello? Maybe I'll take yours. Hello? It's also not working?
That's the number 4.
Hello? No. Hi. Our film, Everyone's Sorry Nowadays, it's also here at the Film Festival Munich at the Cinekindle. It's called in German, Heute heißen alle sorry. And the film is for young people, but also for adults or for anyone who has ever felt too much. So that's what we wanted to make. Not a just kids film, but also for everyone. And it's a coming of age story, and at a certain point we always refer to it's also a tender coming of out story. But then we decided, no, that's actually not the right term, so we switched to queer joy, because we are not telling a struggle, we are telling it in a very positive way, and it's the gaze, it's maybe the lesbian gaze, maybe it's just a gaze of a 13-year-old young girl who sees her favorite actress, who is also a lesbian woman, and she's in a relationship, so she sees them in her backyard, and she looks at them, and she's fine with that. So she's not running away from seeing a lesbian woman because she's afraid of it. We are telling it in a very positive way, and there are some synchronized swimming scenes, and I think they are just very beautiful. And they reminded us, like the director Frédérique Migom, I'm the co-producer and she's the wonderful director from Belgium. We always refer to references like Céline Sciamma's Water Lilies and stuff like that. Of course, we knew that it was not for our audience as a reference, but for us it meant a lot to have that in the film as well.
Thanks. Another film that was I want to bring up the question of the gaze, which you were just talking about. That word always makes me want to laugh because it sounds like homosexuals, but it's actually looking at something, Blicke. Shaum, your film is also very aesthetic and beautiful, one of the most aesthetic films I've seen in a long time. But one of the things I wanted to ask you is about the gaze. How you had G-A-Z-E. In the film, The Gaze on the Gaze, you had a 16-year-old boy in the film, and you had these kind of erotic scenes. So how did you establish like an appropriate gaze within these scenes for the audience and for the minor actor in your film, and how did you establish that?
Yeah, thanks for the question. First, I really like that idea of the queer joy, which I feel that also portraying this film, I wanted to make a film of that all flows. Like we were talking that we are not making a coming of age, we are making a flowing of age of older people, members of the family, So to be in a way like a film, I think could be also a place of utopia, a place to go, like a family that we can follow, more than a family of dystopia, But for me, like this question that you asked, it was really a lot of work and thinking a lot also with the DOP, with Pablo Paloma, how we portrayed that scenes, because they are intimate, because they are delicate, and which is the distance, For us, what was more important is the distance between the camera and them, and of course the work with them during the shooting, So there is these both lines. For the distance of the camera, it was really useful, the work of Chantal Ackerman for us, and how she always shot her characters in the distance of her eyes and in 1 meter, a lot of these scenes. So we took that for the scene of the masturbation or other scenes, that to not be voyeurs, to have the 1 meter, but not to be so close also, not to be so attached to the skin, for example. So it was really difficult to find this balance, but I think that we find it. And then about which was the other line I lost now. One was the distance, and the other was the work, So we were working like 4 months with Jan, which is the main actor, and also Francesco, who is the actor of Alexander, who is a boy who swims in the river, and he's from Munich, and he went to Barcelona. We rehearsed. So for us, what was more important thing is that both of these two young boys were comfortable, and they know each other. So for that reason, I choose also that Francesco, the one who makes Alexander, had to be in the film all the time in the shooting. Because finally he was only shooting 13 days, but he has to be all the shooting, Because then Jan could be like a friend of him, and he could help Jan. I think that relation is really important to make these scenes really comfortable. But then also we made these scenes with an intimate coordinator, that she helped us a lot to this gaze, the first scene that we made with her, she was directing the scene. So I was learning a lot of how she directed the scene. And the last scene, intimate scene of the film, she was not more there because she was in Barcelona. But I learned all that skills, how to portray that, and which has to be the distance, the touch, the technique. Finally, I think it's something more about technique and coordination and choreography, and the two actors has to be comfortable.
It's interesting what you said. I was wondering if the film was influenced by visual art or, a queer video artist, not just narrative. So I think it's interesting you
Yeah, I think that I love dance, and I see a lot of dance. So I took a lot of influence from dance. And then, of course, there is a filmmaker, which is Ira Sachs, who is coming here, I think, the festival. And I really influence his way of working, no? Also, because it's not about, like, the films are not about about being gay. The characters are gay, or are, like, queer. And this is what is beautiful, no? And I want to portray that also.
No, it's interesting. I think that's nice as queer filmmakers finding this queer form. It's an example of kind of what I think this article was talking about finding a queer form. Beautiful. Moving from aesthetics to maybe some politics. Roy, we were talking, your film is highly political and you bring yourself into the story and your experience. It's obviously a very difficult time to make films about these themes and the horrible circumstances that the world is in right now, and especially in the region where you live. Maybe you can talk about, as we talked earlier about the difference living as a queer Israeli versus living as a queer Palestinian in the region, and maybe also bring in this idea of pinkwashing and how it, especially within the current government, as used as a tool or not.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Far From Maine deals with a lot of politics and the experience of living in especially Israel, but Israel-Palestine with some of our Palestinian characters in the film. And it does it in a way that has all of these political concepts and ideas, but embedded in a very intimate kind of language. So maybe this film doesn't bring up pinkwashing, but I'm very aware of pinkwashing. And actually, the film, kind of straddles 3 decades, because Asil was murdered in 2000, the beginning of the Second Intifada, when Palestinians were protesting against several things, including land grabs, and he was killed at a protest that he attended. And Israel's image in the world was terrible in 2000, and in 2001, a government that Netanyahu was in, not as a prime minister, decided to turn LGBT rights as a tool, a marketing tool for Israel. It was a decision by Silvan Shalom, the Minister of Tourism at the time. And really, that's when you start seeing Pride and Tel Aviv, where I live, as a marketing tool for Israel, and in what we now call pinkwashing, thanks to several scholars, including Saad Achan, who's a Palestinian scholar. And this idea that because the country, or specifically Israel, provides some LGBT rights, then we can ignore the human rights atrocities that it is also responsible for. And so when I was making this film, I was definitely aware of it, and the film definitely deals with class, financial class, but also ethnic class, because I'm Jewish, and now I'm in a certain class in Tel Aviv in my life. So those ideas are there, and there's definitely this contrast between where I'm at in life and how Asil, my Palestinian friend, who is also a citizen of Israel, was killed. And I can protest for LGBT, I can protest for anything I want, nothing will happen to me, but Asil obviously couldn't. And so all of that we tried to bake into the film, but really in a language that has to do more with intimacy and less with what might be scholarly or puts you at a distance from the subject itself, from the kind of lived experience that we tried to portray in this documentary.
Thanks. Yeah, it brings up an interesting issue of also the word pride. I've never loved the word pride. When I moved to Germany, it was also, they didn't love the word pride, Stolz. They used the English word pride because there's something a little bit strange about it.
Well, I don't know about other queer people, but I'm filled with like shame and self-hate, all the time. And it has to do also with growing up in a society where, at schools they teach you Bible as history. And in Israel, really, like Jewish people go to school and think that the Bible is their actual literal history. And it's crazy because you think of Israel as this like very scientific place, or you could, but it's also that. And in the Bible, you know, everyone in this room doesn't get like a good image, especially, you know, like anal sex or you know, that is like a big deal, you know, in that text. And so you grow up in a society that has, and that's not just Israeli society, you have to grow up with this distance from a queer identity. And a shame that's embedded in it, and an othering. Even if you see that in yourself, when it comes to others, and I still have that towards other queer people, I put them at a distance. I have homophobia in me. You know, we just had a son, and it was really hard. It's our second son, my partner and I. And I was really feeling like, for a while, maybe two men shouldn't raise kids. You know, maybe it's unnatural. Maybe we're too selfish. Maybe we're not socialized in the right way. And these are, you know, homophobic thoughts that someone put them there. You know, this isn't like, I love my partner. I know he's a great father. But the pride, I think, is also, it's an ambition. It's a goal. You want to get there, you know, and you can have it sometime, but I don't have it all the time.
But it's also that idea of this kind of homo-nationalism, this idea that how can we celebrate our rights when on the other side of the wall, as you show in your film, people are being treated so badly. Yeah,
and unfortunately, you know, when I'm in discourse with, I'm also a journalist, and I'm in discourse with people who lead some of the LGBT institutions in Israel, and some of them are aware of how the state is treating and weaponizing sexuality and homosexuality against gay Palestinians, blackmailing them into cooperating with authorities effectively. And some don't care. You know, Israelis have learned not to see and not to care. And it's really hard to talk to those who don't want to see and care about unlearning it. Even if you share this queer identity, it's not enough because for a lot of reasons, historical reasons also, but political reasons and recent reasons as well, Israelis have learned to really distance themselves from the region that we're embedded in. And from seeing the humanity in others that are our neighbors and are occupied people, you know, effectively the indigenous people occupy. So it's really everything in the Middle East is complicated, but unfortunately, like you said, you know, homo-nationalism is deeply ingrained among a lot of queer people that I know, especially in Tel Aviv, where, you know, we have these rights, we fought for these rights, it's unique to Israel, and if, you know, we give up anything, if, you know, if God forbid there was a one state for Jews and non-Jews like Palestinians and Israelis, we would have to lose those rights because, you know, Muslims, you know, they can't have like equal rights for LGBTs, as if this government, which is all Jewish, is protecting LGBT rights. It's not. It's destroying it slowly, but it's destroying those rights. So it's a tough conversation to have. But I can tell you that if you force Israelis to think about, is this a Jewish thing, LGBT rights, they'll say probably not. It's more complicated than that. But, yeah.
Thanks. And your film displays that, you know, very nicely. Thank you for the film. Yasmin, I want to move to you. The beauty of the ballroom is a great example of chosen family, seeing also an Asian protagonists throughout the world creating chosen families. And it's wonderful that you were able to get German funding for that film. So I want to move a little bit to the financial aspects of visibility. How was it for you having queer Asians with their lives on screen, navigating both the film funding and TV world in Germany?
Yeah. So, okay. The Beauty of Ballroom is the title in Germany, and Tens Across the Borders is the international title, just to clarify that. And it portrays the trailblazers of the Southeast Asian ballroom scene. It's a really beautiful film. And so I'm the German co-producer, and the question was, yes, the financing. Okay, so we came on board 2022, and we're lucky because our regional fund our company Perennial Lens is based in Hessen, and Hessen as well as Moin, I think are two of the most progressive film funds in Germany. So they're very, very open to queer stories and so on. In fact, we also really try to have a jury in Hessen, or juries in Hessen, that are as diverse as possible. So trying to get as many voices in there as possible. It's an interesting process. So we got Hessen Film funding for the film, and then did post there. But in terms of the juries, this is it's an interesting process, because so in Hessen we really fought for the right that the industry is allowed to set the juries. So we decide who's going to go on the jury for the next 2 years. Of course, that's a conversation with Hessen Film Fund, with the fund and so on. And we have a very good relationship. It's a very good working relationship. So I'm one of the representatives of the film industry in Hessen, and so I'm one of the people that kind of says, "Hey, let's try this person. Let's try this person. We should let's suggest the jury." And the interesting thing is, I'm one of the people that, of course, then pushes for diversity in this very white male gremium, in this very white male kind of initiative that we have there. And the trouble we oftentimes have in selecting the jury is we always try to find at least a queer person and a person of color and so on for the juries. But I am oftentimes met with this argument: oh, but we should emphasize quality over these diversity regulations and so on. So you have to, in terms of what you said in the beginning, you have to find people that have gotten access to this industry and have had access for a longer period of time, which is challenging. So they didn't just make one film or two films, but maybe have been able to establish themselves a little bit more, so that they are recognized as an authority, so to say, and also recognized by this other panel of people. And that is very challenging. And every 2 years when we do this, I realize how challenging it is. Sometimes we have, I don't know, some people are already in the jury in Moin or on BKM or something, on the Federal Film Fund, and then they're gone. We can't choose them. And then the selection is unfortunately very, very small. And the selection of people that are recognized for their work. And being recognized for their work also kind of means they have had to have access to certain film festivals and certain awards and so on and so forth. We all know that our films play at queer film festivals wonderfully and so on. But certain other festivals, the other big A-list festivals, they might just take like a few, and then they say, okay, well, we already have 2 queer films. This is kind of that's enough, or African films, or and so of course, as you said before, the door is very, very is a little bit ajar, but it's really still difficult to get in. And so these are the juries are, of course, here in Germany, right? Though they are, of course, who filter what we then see as an audience and what is allowed to be seen. And if we don't have queer voices on those juries, which we also had to fight for a lot, I think PROG and some other organizations did that for the Federal Film Fund and so on. If we don't have those voices, then and people who do not understand stories and queer joy, how important that is, and not just the tragic or let's say the stories that they know have worked in the past and therefore kind of maybe understand, and therefore can go like, I feel like I've seen that somewhere. Okay, we should give this film a try. but have a different understanding for the topics. That is so important, and we're definitely not there yet. Now, again, Hessen Film, they have this for their juries. They have this thing where they do diversity kind of sensitizing workshops in the beginning. So that's a first step, and so on. But I don't know if it's enough yet. Then we didn't get, in terms of financing, we didn't get any broadcast on board, because it was also just, again, like it was too foreign for them. And that's, again, for broadcasters, it's this thing again where they go like, oh, well, we don't, we just recently had one queer film here or something, and then they might not say that directly, but it's still very, very tough to get in, I would say.
Well, congratulations at least on getting the funding and a good distributor for the film. It's a beautiful film. And I find it interesting that the title, the international title is 10 Across the Borders, which is a very political title, and the German title is The Beauty of the Ballroom, which is much softer and easier to understand. Very German. Springing off of that, I want to go back to you, Johanna, and ask you, so, I mean, often in Europe, and especially in Germany, the film funding is excellent and very good, and, supports many of our careers, but it's not particularly often friendly for experimentation. Like Yasmin said, they like to go with projects that they can rely on and know that will bring them back a return or be very successful, which I can understand because it's often with taxpayer money. But do you think with the success of projects like Heated Rivalry, even though it was an international project, opens the doors, at least against the backlash that we're seeing?
I mean, every queer representation is great for the first. And I think we maybe have to talk a bit about what we mean when we say representation. So this is maybe a question I would like to hear answered by you as well, because we, Leticia and myself, think or thought a lot about, we went deeply in this thinking because we wrote a book about diversity in storytelling, and there is like 3 narratives of how you can write a marginalized main character, and one is representation. But as we look at representation in our perspective, it's really small because it's only what you deal with in casting. So it's only what is visible. And if we think about queerness, which queerness is visible? Which queer is visible? And or is it about just a queer actor who had to be out to be casted? And so this is like really interesting. And so we always say representation is better than no representation, because, as Yasmin said, it's money. So if there are actors or is a crew behind that is queer, they get their foot in the door and there's money they get for their work. So this is always good. But what we've found out in our research, we did like analyzing a lot of movies and series, mainstream, and art house, children and old ones, and there are 2. If the marginalized perspective really takes a role in the plot, then you either can tell it in a really deficient and stereotypical way or in a really congruent way. Like I told before, that where the strategies of being othered and discriminated really are not the theme, but really have effect on the behavior and the reactions of the character. So talking about what is quality in diversity, I think this is really something the funding juries always have to talk about or should talk about. This could be like an idea to have either just representation, but it's better than no representation, or and what is the difference between defizitäre Erzählung? We say that in German. We haven't translated it into English for now, but or a congruent Erzählung. So this is really something that could be like an easy idea to have a quality there. But coming back to your question, I think this movie or the series has the big success because I think a lot of straight cis women are watching it, and they love it because I think they want to be looked at from men like the two gay men look at each other. Because in the patriarchal society we live in, men are not trained to look to women as equal as themselves. So I don't know, but still it's a great series for representation. And I think, I don't know, I watched, after I watched Heated Rivalry, I watched Off Campus. I don't know if some of you have watched it already. It's a Prime series. And I think this is like, it's ice skating, no, how is it called? Hockey, ice hockey as well. And, but it's so super straight. And there's really no queer character at all. So, yeah, but all the same women, I think, who loved Heated Rivalry love this too. So this is like the backlash we are in.
Before I move on to ask a few more questions, I just want to give a chance if anyone to break down the hierarchy here on the stage and off the stage as part of diverse storytelling. Does anyone from the audience want to ask anything to any of our panelists? Okay, well, you had your chance. You can still raise your hand. Still, if you're shy. No, it's still ongoing. I'll keep my eyes scrolling through the bright lights. Xiao, your film was about a Spanish family on tour, on a bike tour along the Danube. I think it was a nice setting. So this is a setting we all have kind of seen on our summer holidays. Were you trying? Was it a Europe-focused, on a political level? Was it a Europe-focused film? Were you trying to show the open borders, traveling beyond your country, within your storytelling?
Yeah, it's true. It's working. Yeah, it's true. I think in a way, I have the joy of having a family amazing. So in that sense, it was really organic for me to portray this family and to portray this situation of a family going Germany, Austria, from Barcelona. So in a way, it was organic. Of course, when I was writing, I was being aware of what I was doing, no, and then I realized the political statement that I can do with something that is really organic for me, no. But on terms of representation also, and how this family, I think it's a film more than the desire. It's a film about education of love, and how as a parents, and you can learn from your kids, and how as a kid you can learn about how the parents follows you, no. So for me, in a way, it was it's a character that when I was writing, it's not marginalized in that sense. I feel that he doesn't know if there is a sentence in the film that he says, "I don't like boys, I like Gerard," and for me that sentence was really political in that, because I felt that it's also in Spain, the generation that is growing now, a lot of this generation, they are more fluid. So also what I like in that sense, I like this fluidness. And you said about this serious, no, that it's really straight. I saw one chapter also, and it was like, yeah, I don't know, like I think that also in the gays could be like, in queerness also could be really straight and really capitalism and really. So I wanted to portray looking also these boys and these that are growing, this new generation, how they are working with this fluidness. And I think that there is a lot of mixed and diverse way of living this life. But what was really interesting was the casting process. And we saw 850 boys during 3 months. And the casting process was just talking with them. So I think that sometimes the representation also is in the process of how we make films. And that castings were important because a lot of them, they were expressing for the first time things that they were inside of them. But because we were strangers, they were more calm to express that. And I feel that I was in the casting, I felt that we made a good job doing only that. Then will be the film, but just have the space for them to express. I think that this is the political thing of cinema, and this is the important thing of cinema. Not so much what we tell, that of course, but it's easy. It's more the way how we make films.
Thank you. I'll move to Claudia, talking about the way we make films. Your production company is in Erfurt. It's in the former East Germany. I wanted to ask you, I think part of being in a queer community is, for me at least, very inspiring because we connect on a certain level beyond just our profession, beyond just we all do the same thing. We connect on a human, on a social, on an emotional level often. Not everyone, not with everyone. But I've heard that in the former East Bundesland, in the former East regions of Germany, there's a more solidarity, and there's kind of more of a community and community building. Do you find this working there, and how's the community building aspects within East Germany and the representations that you're able to convey on the screen coming out of there?
Complicated, yes, again, not working. Yeah, it's a complex question. I mean, when I was raised in, and I made my Abitur, I was 18 and then I left. And now I'm back for already 12 years, and I lived in Munich and I lived in the US, so I lived places, and I think when I was having my coming out, I was not there. I've never felt that I am just in those communities. Of course that helps, but I always felt like I want to tell the stories, or the way maybe also I make films, or I work together with colleagues. So it's for me hard to answer that questions. Yes, there of course are communities, but I think the same way as they are everywhere else, except maybe Berlin, which is of course a very big community. So I think it's the way of being not seen as a, different categories where I am in. So I always used it as a potential for myself to be playful with it and not to be against something. So I always try to make or listen to myself. Like with that project, it's a project what I would have loved to see when I was at this age. I love it today, and I think it's for generations. So this is something where I feel really proud of, that I'm now in the position where I can also be a community and be the person who makes films possible. So, but it's not just this lesbian or queer community for me. I think it's everywhere, because we are all humans, and I think we should all look at each other and listen to each other and try to be better than we sometimes are. And I think our films should also be different than they maybe were, because I think we should be more hopeful and tell more the perspective of not a hero or heroine in a story. We should tell stories about communities. And if they are queer, and if they are whatever they are, that's fine. But I think that's the way I would love to continue making films, that we look at each other more and listen more careful. So I don't know if I answered the question in a way.
Thanks for making films out of the East too, and I think it's important that
It's fun to make films there, so I don't know. It's good.
I'll move back to you, Roy. Here in Germany, I think in the last few years, there's been many artists and people working in various fields, academia, creative fields, that have become afraid to say their opinions because of either active censorship or fear of getting canceled over certain political situations, including a lot of Palestinian voices, progressive Jewish voices. How is it for you to make a film that's so critical of the Israeli government living in Israel? Were you afraid? And not only critical of the government, that shows your family in not a good light. You show your own sister, in such a harsh light. Were you afraid of?
For an international audience, maybe. I think for an Israeli audience, my sister passes as, oh yeah, well I see that. I understand why she can be next to Gaza, hear missiles being dropped on Gaza, and talk about birds chirping in her backyard as the only thing she really can hear right now, But yeah, I think, going back to what Jerome said, we have to be really mindful about how we make our movies, because it's kind of like it's a path of discovery, for us. And for me, partnering with Serge Godet, who's here, the French producer who had made 5 Broken Cameras, was crucial in kind of saying, okay, this is my path early on in making this film. I am going to make a film that has this as my, this person is my producer. He knows my politics, I know his. And we agreed very early on also that we won't take any Israeli funding to make this film. And it's not because of BDS. It's because the conversations that I thought I would have with Israeli commissioning editors and their teams would have tried to pull me in directions that I didn't want to be pulled with this film. And I, only get one shot. We only get one shot to make, a film. And I wanted it to be the path that I want to carve. Now, it doesn't mean that in the future I won't take Israeli funding for that film. I'm not that person. But it was very clear for me, if I wanted to say what I wanted to say with this film, that I had to be mindful of that and make the choices. And I've been lucky with this film to have, 5 co-producers that attached themselves to this film that were from Europe. Now, am I worried about, so we're going to play this film later, we're going to launch it at a festival in Israel later this year. Am I worried about the repercussions? I don't know. I think these things also always have to do, it's kind of absent from that, with class, right? I'm not Palestinian, and in Israel, that's a class. I'm Jewish, and I live in Tel Aviv, so, and I really, the way Israel is set right now, I'm not worried about what might happen to me, and also it's not the biggest problem, that the world has. But if I were a Palestinian, I would worry, right? If I made a film like this and I stayed living in Israel, I would be more worried, because one of the people featured in my film she's Palestinian. She had the police raid her house recently because of her activist work. It has nothing to do with my film. My film hasn't come out in Israel yet. No one knows she's in it. But because of her activist work, she was raided by the police, by the Israeli police, and she's an Israeli citizen. So of course, my answer is not just as a queer person, as a political person, my politics or my art. It has to do with, I'm safe for now, and even if the way Israel is deteriorating, and it is, I still am safe. Now we live in Germany, so I don't know where it's headed, right? But we're staying in Germany, so I know it's headed. We know what the history could be, but I'm not worried existentially in that sense, no.
Thanks. Yeah, I think it's important that we all as artists are able to also communicate with our cultural funders and our producers and come together and unify so that we can, create series with diverse characters and have a critical voice, and that we're not all scared of the person above us on the ladder, Well done. Yasmin, Yasmin, I'm going to close out with you. Tell me a little bit about the process of connecting. How did you connect with the director on this project? And what was their process of finding all of the different ballroom houses throughout the world? Because I thought it was such an interesting example of diversity in the sense of, instead of, I think you started the film in Manila, and I was like, oh, this is a film. I didn't read the description before I watched the film, so I was like, oh, this is a film about the ballroom scene in Manila. And then you moved around to different Asian communities, East Asian communities, and then to New York. So how did you make that connection?
So, Chancellor Wei is the director of the film, Singaporean director, they, them. And Se is also a dance before, so that's their first film, their first longer film. And they're also a dance filmmaker and a dancer. They knew one of the protagonists, so they were portraying the Thai, the Malaysian, and the Filipino trailblazers of ballroom in Southeast Asia. And they knew Sun, the Thai protagonist. And Sun was just getting into this, and ballroom really kind of just came about in Southeast Asia. It went over there in 2015, 2016, even though it existed in New York since the 1970s, right? And Sun was the trailblazer there and said, man, somebody has to make a film about this. This is so exciting and it's so beautiful and it's such a wonderful community that this, it knits us together as a community even more and connects us even more across borders, hence the title. It's actually Sun's idea, also that title. And so they decided together that they're going to make this film. And of course, because it's such an international community, the ballroom community, Sun said, let's portray someone in Manila, let's portray Teddy in Malaysia. So that's kind of how that came about. And of course, so during COVID, many balls went online. And the beautiful thing was that then people could connect even more, because then you could have a truly international ball. Nobody had to take money into their hands and travel, right? So that is how the Southeast Asian scene especially connected with the New York scene, even more intensely, without traveling. They could have judges from New York and from the States, even though, and they didn't have to pay for their travel and so on. And and that's partly how it came about, that everyone connected and traveled. How we got involved, we know the Filipino producer, Alan Ang, really well. And he suggested this film to us, amongst others. And my producing partner, Rodney Charles, actually, so he's heterosexual, but he was in the 1990s, he was in New York and kind of stranded. And he was kind of saved by Willie Ninja, one of the big fathers of in ballroom, father of the House of Ninja. And he took him in, and then even in Paris, he helped him and so on. So he had a huge love and connection to the ballroom scene, besides not being queer. So he was like, oh my God, this is amazing. We have to do this. So so that's how we kind of jumped on board.
Nice, yeah. Great story. So thanks all of our panelists, and for everyone in the audience, the QMS Awards are happening in half an hour or so? 5:30 p.m. here. You'll get a chance to see Roy's film screening and the award ceremony. And I have to say it was a pleasure being on the jury this year, because I saw such amazing films. All of your films were totally terrific, and despite a backlash, queer films are more diverse than ever, this within the storytelling and within the stories, and I'm very impressed, and thanks FilmFEST München for screening such a diverse group of terrific films, also bold and political films. Thanks for coming to the panel, thanks for being part of it, and Enjoy the rest of your festival.